Yeah, right. So in the last session, we have discussed about Medicaid enterprise system like MEAs, etc., all that, and followed by this, we have even discussed about the role of a Medicaid professional, right? So either we may be a business analyst or a quality analyst, etc. So that is all something which was discussed in the last session. Today, I'm going to discuss about MMIs, which is important. So when you are working on Medicaid claims, especially in the field of healthcare, because we know like we have two, one is about Medicare and second is a Medicaid. Medicaid, Medicare is a federal government program managed by the federal government. But when it comes to the Medicaid itself is concerned, as we know, like Medicaid is a state government program. So managing the rules and regulations, policies, procedures, eligibility criteria, everything will be managed by the respective state government. In this regard, so when we are implementing Medicare management systems, right? So which is called MMIS in short, right? So this Medicaid management information system, how we are going to develop, and what is that something that we are going to develop? Everything will be varied, depends on the kind of goals that respective state government consists of, because depends on the geographical and demographical location, followed by the kind of people they were located over there. So to whom, what kind of benefits are we going to provide? Everything will be varied. It will not be the same in all the states. So Medicaid management information systems, majorly a group of kind of subsystems and all, which is developing majorly to meet a specific goals which that particular state requires. So that is essentially needed here. So this may be varied from state to state, as I mentioned earlier, because it will not be the same in all the states, right? So it depends on the people uh, economical status, because Medicaid program majorly for low income group people as well as for the disabled children, we majorly focuses. So the rules and regulations majorly varies, right? So because whenever we try to understand about these business goals and all, we need to understand the requirement of CMS, because as in when you know, CMS is a government this thing, right? So Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So we'll be looking after all the. It's a kind of regulatory body who regulates Medicare and Medicaid policies, adjudications, right? Everything will be managed by CMS department, a government authority body. So we must ensure whenever we are developing MMIS, it's always important for us to understand and meet CMS requirements well in advance. At the same time, we also make sure it has to validate it as well as certifying the MMIS to ensure the kind of support as well as the kind of effective management of the programs. But must ensure that we need to satisfy CMS directives, etc. Everything. This is something which is important when we are implementing MMIS. Next, majorly in what way CMS is playing a vital and important role in managing this. If you try to understand this, CMS supports the kind of efforts which state putting in, right? So to provide access to different resources of data, which CMS using in administering the Medicaid programs. And also, it also provides some kind of technical guidances. At the same time, what is the required training through different agency components like Medicare Integrity Institution, right? So all these things. But when it comes to the implementation of Medicaid, right? So kind of directions that Medicaid market majorly focuses, majorly on the healthcare activities. Because major focus, we focus more on the healthcare activities rather than the processes or the systems, all that. So if you are a business analyst or a quality analysis role, right? So whenever we are playing, we need to understand how this can be configured and what are the different configuration steps that are required us to follow. And if there is any kind of changes due to the business rules as well as the government mandates was taken as a decision, how to make those changes happen here and how to make the changes in the existing application. Because as I told you, repeating the same, because state to state, their rules and as well as their goals, business goals and all everything may be varied. So to address those things and making necessary changes is something being a business analyst we need to do. But when it comes to the quality analyst, we make sure whatever the quality systems that we are implementing, because implementing EDI processes, and we must be an EDI specialist, like because EDI transactions, either it can be 835 or 837 or 270, different EDI codes generally we use to implement these. So understanding these processes and systems so that it is more effective for us, so that we can implement these things effectively by integrating EDI transaction codes, etc. At the same time, having knowledge over the kind of files that we are implementing, right? So different file formats we are using, either it can be XML or it can be JSON. So how to read an XML or a JSON file and how to make it corrected, right? So what kind of corrections that are required for us to make within that. This is something which we must be knowing, especially being into the role of a business analyst or a quality analyst professionals. We must have that knowledge. So this is essentially required when we are doing it. Because it's not only about understanding about the MMIS process well in advance. Of course, that is important. I never say no for that. But when we are trying to understand about MMIS process, etc., all that, it's not only about the MMIS process, but we must be having some idea over the EDS part or accumulator managements. At the same time, how this claim financials will be implemented. So everything we need to know, because especially for a BA, we will be focusing on the functional requirement perspective. We develop functional requirements. We try to understand what requirements system requires, right? So everything has to be documented. This is for the role of a business analyst, we do it. As far as the quality analyst itself is concerned, we'll be majorly focusing on designing and developing, implementing the test cases, at the same time, test strategies. Followed by this, whatever the claim processing and systems in reference to the Medicaid claims are remaining the same, but there are some changes which we may require to do customization. That's where generally tailoring the claims processing system according to the requirement of the organization is needed. Next, we need to prepare some test documentation also, because preparing different test plans or test cases, test results, everything we must be knowing with, because the same responsibility even will be played by the business analyst as well. Because I'm just comparing the role of a BA to QA, because some people works as a business analyst, they'll be focusing more on the requirement perspective. At the same time, quality analyst will also works on the requirement, but from the testing perspective. That's the difference. Okay. So the more or less the roles and responsibilities maybe somewhere it will align. So understanding this is something useful even for a BA and as well as for the systems, for the quality analyst also. So because requirements we are gathering from the BA, wherein to understand those requirements from the testing perspective and preparing some test cases, test plans, test cases, test documentation, everything has to be done by the QA. Next, in addition to that, if you are a quality analyst, let us assume that. So in addition to that, as a quality analyst, we must be focusing on the functional testing majorly, because what are the different functionalities we have implemented. Assume that the functionalities were implemented. We must make sure how these functionalities are testing, right? So we must ensure that to perform some regression testing. For example, if there is any changes happens in the system in between, and how it is getting affected, you want to know. So that regression testing we want to do. At the same time, we must be doing some integration testing. Let's say that MMIS you are integrating with some other external systems. So some integration, some API testing, everything like using some Postman, right? So different integration testings, everything we have to do. Next, we must understand and validate the claims adjudication, because something like either it can be logic compliances or it can be Medicaid policies or processing workflows. By understanding whatever the kind of data valuation that we do, having some knowledge over SQL is also important, because now and then having knowledge over SQL, etc., everything is essentially needed. So that is something which we must be knowing, right? So especially when we are working on EDA process or claims or accumulators or any claim financials and all, we need to access the data. Once we have access to the data, we need to write some queries. For that reason, SQL queries are something which is needed. So this is something need to understand about Medicaid Management Information Systems, which is called MMIs in short, especially as a role of a business analyst or a quality analyst, because state to state requirements may vary, right? So understanding that requirements for the particular state, respective state, and making necessary changes is something which BA or QA1 has to be performed. That is what something we are going to discuss, right? So detailed explanation about each and every role, right? So how this can be played, that I'm going to discuss in the next session.